I was excited to help connect the Harvard community, but one day someone would connect the whole world. The thing is, it never even occurred to me that that someone might be us.
Welcome back to CEO Acting Lessons. I'm Daniel. I'm a director of over 30 plays nationwide and an organizational consultant.
I'm Patrick. I've acted in over 20 productions and am now a strategy consultant.
Today, we're going to be talking about Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO and founder of Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg is going to be a really interesting person for us to take a look at. He is not that rock star that Steve Jobs was, which he really commanded everyone's attention on stage. He's a little bit more of an awkward persona. He's known to be a little bit more off-putting in the way that he delivers his lines in his speech. But this is a speech in which he is at his home in Harvard, and he's speaking to people who he really cares deeply about, and he really cares deeply about what he's saying. And I think he shines here. So I'm very actually excited to explore why that is.
I also like the speech because he gives it from a podium. I think it's pretty common to see in the business world speeches or presentations from a podium, and it's a slightly different challenge.
Dr. Mark Zuckerberg.
I love this place. Thank you all for coming out in the rain, the pouring rain. We're going to make this worth it for you.
So Mark Zuckerberg, what he does really well there is he's, quote, in character from the moment you see him getting out of his chair. And that's a really crucial thing a lot of people don't do for speeches. They kind of walk on, maybe focused on looking at their notes or just thinking about what they want to say. And it's not until they get to that podium that they look at the crowd. Mark Zuckerberg is taking in the people that he's going to be appreciating. He's smiling and he's looking at people and he steps up, and then he even takes another moment where he just appreciates everyone around him. And that sets the tone for the speech and for who he is in this room.
That's a great point, Daniel, about character. I think it's important to note that even in the business world, each speech or presentation has its own character. You can imagine if I was giving a serious presentation to my employees about potential layoffs, I shouldn't start it with smiling and walking in and taking a big happy breath before starting my speech. That wouldn't be very appropriate. Your presentation starts the moment that you walk onto stage.
And something I do off stage that I think is really important is I just take a breath. I just go. And I think whether you're saying something really somber or something really fun, what that breath does is it allows you just to sort of put your body in a neutral place. And then the way that you can get to that next step is to feel that feeling you want to put forward. And in this case, we're talking about two very basic feelings, great place to start, which is just joy and a somberness, right? So joy is just how can I get my smile? How can I open up and loosen up for that joy and just put that in my body? And then somberness would be how can I slow my body down and put my body very still and keep my face pretty focused. And so you have those two choices, and it feels maybe a little touchy-feely, but you can see how that actually transformed my sense of myself and therefore how you take me in as well. Now that we've shown you how to step up onto stage and be in the right tone for the speech that you're giving, we want to jump a little bit forward in time, and we're going to watch a moment in which Mark Zuckerberg really kind of misses the boat on how he uses the tone of his voice to continue to give that story over to the audience. I'm going to put a couple little things he could do better. And then in the second after that, we'll actually show you a version where he achieves it great on his own. So you'll get to see both the not perfect part and then the really well done part as well. So let's take a look.
We have all started lifelong friendships here, and some of us even families. That's why I'm so grateful to this place. Thanks, Harvard. Today, I want to talk about purpose.
So you can see that his thanks Harvard there, it felt a little awkward for some reason. There was a little less applause than maybe he wanted there. And then it jumped into this really big sort of central theme of his speech about purpose. So it felt like there was supposed to be a real kind of resonant moment with that. And what he did is he sort of what we call threw it away. He said, thanks, Harvard. as if it was sort of not meaningful to him.
Thanks, Harvard.
And so a choice you can do in that moment is, if you really want to thank someone, to set up the tone that this is going to be important, that you've met friends and families, and that there is going to be a central purpose to your work in the future and now. And that there's a line that you draw there about how important that was. You could really say, thanks, Harvard. I did something different. I did something with my volume. I did something with my pace. All of that we're going to get into in a much deeper way at a later point. But we wanted just to start showing you a little bit of changes that could really make a difference for you.
That's a great point, Daniel. I would say when you're practicing your speech, experiment a bit with tone and volume. And if you can, have somebody practice with you. Daniel, since I have you here, would you help me give another shot at that opening line?
I think I heard that I have been a theater director before, so I might be a little bit comfortable kind of giving you some notes and pushing you through. Let's see. I mean, this might be a little outside my realm, but we'll try.
We have all started lifelong friendships here, and some of us even families. That is why I'm so grateful to this place. Thanks, Harvard. Today, I'm going to talk about purpose.
I've noticed 3 things I would like you to try. First is, make a more weight towards families than friends. When you say that second part of the line, show us that family has some extra meaning. And then when you think Harvard for the family part, for the meaningful part. Put that right into there. And finally, when you get to that last bit about purpose, see if you can really then bring the weight of how important your family is to a larger calling that we all have in the world beyond our career.
We have all started lifelong friendships here. And some of us, even families. That's why I am so grateful to this place. Thanks, Harvard. Today, I'm going to talk about purpose.
Bravo, Patrick. That is an interesting dynamic way to take a note. And what I want to just point out is there were a million ways Patrick could have gone with that note. And that is one of the things that you really want to do on the director side of this, if you're working with someone on a speech, is just try to think about how they should feel about the words they say. And ultimately, that's going to improve tremendously how you deliver the speech. In fact, we're about to see another great example of how you can really feel the emotions behind the words you say. But before we do that, we want to see Mark Zuckerberg's setup for this section and watch how what Patrick just did is very similar to what he's going to do to modulate the tone of his voice. Suddenly, the tone will be telling a through line to the story, bringing us from one step to the next and building on it. It's a subtle thing. If you don't quite see it yet, don't worry. We're going to get to this deeper in later episodes.
You see, my hope was never to build a company. I wanted to have an impact. And as all these people started joining us, I just assumed that that's what they wanted to do too. So I never took the time to explain what it was that I hoped we'd build.
Yeah, you can see there that he's assuming that all these other people wanted to join him too. So I never took the time to see what it is that I wanted to build. And it's just a great subtle thing, but you can see how he's put one part of his line and seen the effect of assuming about other people, how that weight directly impacted him, and you can see the transition of his tone.
This is also a great example of gesturing with a podium. You should realize that a podium is going to have a slant to it. So any gestures need to be high enough to be seen over it. They're well used, very clean.
Patrick, I think what you do with your hands in every speech is important. So is there anything particular to think about in terms of your hands with podiums?
Podiums, in a way, give you an anchor, a place to kind of keep your hands where they feel safe, where it looks natural. We've all seen speeches where people's hands are kind of bumbling behind them or in front of them or shuffling papers. Podiums really give you that nice anchor. So when you do gesture, it's noticeable, it's seen, and they can return to the natural resting place.
I just assumed that that's what they wanted to do too. So I never took the time to explain what it was that I hoped we'd build.
So you can see he set up a pretty intense story here. Let's let him play it out a bit and see how he's really able to get to the emotional depth of what that experience felt like for him.
A couple years in, some big companies wanted to buy us. I didn't want to sell. I wanted to see if we could connect more people. And we were building the first version of Newsfeed at the time, and I thought, if we could just launch this, it could change how we all learn about the world. Nearly everyone else wanted to sell. Without a sense of higher purpose, this was their startup dream come true, and it tore our company apart. After one particularly tense argument, one of my close advisors told me if I didn't agree to sell the company right now, I would regret that decision for the rest of my life. Relationships were so frayed that within a year or so, every single person on our management team was gone. That was my hardest time leading Facebook.
Something magical happens there. Mark Zuckerberg talks about how alone he feels. And I don't know about you, but it felt to me that I could feel his loneliness palpably right there. And I don't know how Zuckerberg accomplished that, but I can tell you what actors do. And they do something called emotional recall, which is they try to put themselves back in a moment that feels the same emotions as the things they're saying. In this case, it can be Zuckerberg's real life, actually remembering and seeing in his mind's eye as if it's right in front of him, as if it's happening right now.
Let's actually take a moment, dive into a few of those storytelling moments, and explore how emotional recall is used.
So a couple places where Zuckerberg may be using emotional recall is when he says everyone else wanted to sell and they were not connected enough to the purpose. They just wanted to make the money, so it nearly tore our company apart. And something that he does there potentially is really thinking about those people who wanted to sell, those personal relationships we had, and remembering maybe even a moment where they said that to him and how it made him feel.
Nearly everyone else wanted to sell.
And then also potentially moving to where the arguments started. And it started seeing the company tearing apart and maybe a particular room in a particular moment where he remembers how people were just at each other's throats.
Without a sense of higher purpose, this was their startup dream come true, and it tore our company apart.
And that all comes together when he talks about one particular tense argument. And that's the best place you can do a skill like this, because then you can get really specific, see them, how far they are from you, what their face looked like, who else was in the room. And that puts you back in that moment, and it feels like it's happening to you now. And then the audience might feel like it's happening to them now as well.
One of my close advisors told me if I didn't agree to sell the company right now, I would regret that decision for the rest of my life.
And when we talk about tools like emotional recall, I'm always reminded of the Maya Angelou quote, which is at the end of the day, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
We want to leave you then with Zuckerberg bringing this all together in a really emotionally grounded, powerful part of his speech towards the end. And just watch for the things like how he plays with his pitch, how he uses his hands very subtly to come off the podium, and how he seems to be doing some emotional recall to put himself back in the place. And finally, how he's connecting to his audience and making it about them as well.
Justice. I was blown away. Here is a young guy who has every reason to be cynical. He wasn't sure if the country he calls home, the only one he's known, was going to deny him his dream of going to college. But he wasn't feeling sorry for himself. He wasn't even thinking of himself. He has a greater sense of purpose, and he's going to bring people along with him. It says something about our situation today that I can't even say his name because I don't want to put him at risk. But if a high school senior who doesn't know what the future holds for him can do his part to move the world forward, then we owe it to the world to do our part too.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for watching CEO Acting Lessons. If you like what you saw, please subscribe and check out our other videos. And as always, right below me here is today's toolkit. So please take a look at that, and we'll see you next time.